greatest parts was we started with you being pregnant with Corey.
Little lamb.
Yeah, and so Terry was stationed over in England.
Yes.
And you were in what, Cambridge?
Cambridge. Cambridge. I was going to say Maryland. Cambridge.
Cambridge, England.
England. Thank you.
And then you told a story about coming back over by boat.
Yeah.
Where you had met.
Actually, it was a ship. I mean, it was the Queen Mary. So
Queen
it was
Mary.
really classy.
Mm-hmm. And you met 3 nuns.
Yeah, they were great. They really were.
Tell us
They
about
were as evil as I was. They loved going into breakfast. They'd wait for me, and we'd go into breakfast. And I mean, it was all paid for,
Yeah.
so you could do that.
And they also skipped church.
No, they were always at church, because I was too. And
Oh.
I'd see them, you know.
Okay.
They weren't doing it for me, it was for their own self.
I thought you said they skipped church to see a movie.
Oh, they did one, and actually that Sunday.
Yeah.
And I found them, and I went, oh, you know, I gave them, and they were, wait, baby, they got me. I said, I don't care what you do, it's your life. You know, they were lovely people, lovely nuns, 3 of them. I thought, this is great. These nuns, I can give them hell. And that's because I got plenty of it from the nuns.
From the nuns.
Oh, they were delightful. And every once in a while I think about, gee, I wonder how Sister Josephine, and I forget the other 2 names.
Did you keep in touch after the ship?
Yeah, for a while.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's nice.
But they were delightful.
And then you came back and you moved in with Lila, right? And Papa T.
Mm-hmm.
In the garage apartment, right?
Mom and Dad
In the
weren't
upstairs.
there.
No.
You know, I mean, they were there, but I just went back as a wife.
Yeah.
And Corey was just, good Lord, she was beautiful and so little. I think she was about 4 or 5 months.
So cute.
Yeah.
And then you what was the address that you said Terry grew up at nearby?
347 Keystone.
Keystone, yeah.
Oh, you're going to check that out. Well, you might
Yeah.
as well. That's River
I'd love
Forest.
to, yeah. Mm-hmm. And he grew up there.
He was, yeah, he did. He grew up there, and so did his 4 other brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Grandma and Grandpa, of course.
And so then,
And that was this railroad was right there, and their home was right across the street. It's a nice
Okay.
little spot.
And then, so you and Terry were married in the late 50s?
Yeah, I can't remember that either.
50s, sorry.
50 something.
Yeah.
Well,
And had Mom in 60, early 60.
Exactly.
January 60.
Very good
And then-
retention, you guys.
And then Terry and Missy 62 and 63, right? And then with the 3 kids, of course, then Terry passed.
No, he was killed. And they came in and they went up the stairs because nobody made any deal about it then. They went up the stairs because that's where the place was where they had all the money. You know?
mm-hmm.
And they drew their guns, and all of a sudden you'd hear screaming. Somebody said, "Stop, help that man," and Terry tackled him. And
And there were multiple people, so
yeah, but
of
he
course.
no.
Even
no
if he
helpers.
tackled the
they
one,
came-
then the other came
Yeah,
behind.
but the other one came behind him and shot him right through the heart. Isn't that awful?
It's awful.
Oh, I went right over and put my arms around them. Yeah, I mean, Grandma and Grandpa were. They were so crushed. And then Dickie came and Bobby came, and you know, Tommy was still living there. He was still living in his home.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't married yet.
Mm-hmm.
So 1, 2, 3, and Jim.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean, was it just like the worst feeling you could go through?
It was horrible, but I'm just so happy I had my own. parents and homes and my brothers, you know.
Yeah.
That was, Terry got the short end, you know, which was sad, with children and his mom and dad. And, oh, they were heartbroken.
So there's like some time in between where obviously you were getting over the tragedy and kids were still little and
Yeah,
you were
great.
getting as much help as you can get.
Yeah, but that was one of the best things, was having those kids.
Mm-hmm.
It really, really helped me. You know, it was medicinal, really medicinal.
They sort of.
So then we were over at my mom and dad's and went to Grandma and Grandpa's every day, just only right to do that. But I was so happy to be back at 117 since I had no other choice. And I had the three of them, so the four of us would all curl up at night. You know, and then Ross, God bless him, would come in and sit them and tell them stories every night. You know, and I'd be like,
Come here.
Corey's the only one who remembered it.
Yeah.
And I was happy when it faded a lot in her mind, because that was tough for her. She was
Yeah.
4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4, like you would still be cognizant, but you would be able to get over it faster.
Yeah, but
right?
she, remember Corey, she's a smart gal, your mama. So I think she really, that didn't fall out of her head.
He was, the way I understand and know him in my heart, it was a kind man who loved his family, who loved his friends, very loyal too, very, very loyal human being. Was probably the best friend you could have. And I always heard that he always looked out for the underdog. I always heard that. And stuck up for people that couldn't stick up for themselves, or, you know, people were given a hard time to. And I really admire that about him.
Great athlete. You know, he was drafted by the Philadelphia Phillies, as everybody knows, out of high school. Went to Kenyon College because he threw his arm out. You know, he went to Phillies single A ball, and he threw his arm out. His two big sports were football and baseball, and he was the quarterback at football, and he was a pitcher of baseball.
I always joke around with people and say, like, you know, my dad used to pitch 95 miles an hour. So when I watched a baseball game with Rob, I'm like, my dad did that. So
We grew up fatherless for 4 years, and people were always talking about him. Well, as I got older, they kept talking about him. Friends of his, to this day, still talk about him and what an incredible person he was.
and I had met Leo, but he goes, I understand your dad was Terry Zilligan, is that correct? And I'm like, yes. And I've been in the business for 13 years. Leo's brother was my dad's best friend. And Leo goes, I just have to tell you what a stand-up, wonderful guy he was. He goes, he was choked up on the phone. He just called me out of the blue. It was so unexpected and so amazing. I was crying after I hung up. He didn't take any crap from anybody, but he sure stuck up for people if need be. And he said to me, he goes, and he sure hated cursing. And I was like, really? Oh man, he was kind of mad at me. So, it was funny he said that. He made just a point that he was almost saying to me, do you know what kind of man your dad was? And I said, well, I've heard many stories.
And on the way over, when we were all set for the meeting, I mentioned, you grew up in South River Forest. Did you know any of the Zilligan boys? Bob Mondo goes, the Zilligan boys, those guys were my heroes. He goes, and especially that Terry Zilligan. That guy taught me how to play football. He taught me how to fight. I revere Terry Zilligan. He goes, everybody revered Terry Zilligan. He doesn't even know who I am, right? And then he says, he goes, I don't know if you know what happened to him. I go, yeah, I do. He goes, well, yeah. He goes, you know, that devastated everybody and went on about it. And all of a sudden he goes, why do you ask? So then I didn't want to tell him. You know, because I knew, all right, so I go, well, I'm his son.
Yeah. Oh my God.
He started crying in the car, crying.
When I was 10 weeks old, I had a condition called pyloric stenosis. And I mean, you're going to die if they can't fix that. And they, you know, couldn't figure out what was wrong. My mama found it in one of her medical books. She found it and diagnosed. I'm sure the doctors didn't like that, but she diagnosed me and said, I know this is what she has. My grandma Zilligan was like going crazy. Like, why can't this baby keep anything down? They had nights and nights and nights of me crying. And I think at one point that I had heard the story that he was like, can't we give her something? Can't we? And my mom was like, she just had surgery, for God's sake. She's just a tiny baby. She'll be fine. And this is like their 8th night without sleep. He goes, I'm crying. And my mom's sleeping. He picks up my bassinet, puts it in this big closet. Closes the door. And she was ready to kill him, but I thought that was hysterical. I could totally relate to that.
That's so
I mean,
funny.
Terry and I are like that. But he was just like, look, kid, I need to sleep.
You guys have the same dedication to sleep.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So when he was about 15 years old, there's a guy that he's just out with his friends in downtown Oak Park, and there's a guy who had escaped from Dunning. Any of the old timers know that it was a mental institution. And he was talking to flies and swatting at flies in the light or something. And Terry Zilligan, when he walked by him, made some smart aleck comment to him. You know, like, you gay dummy or whatever. Well, the guy took exception to that. He started following him. They notice the guy's following no matter what they do. So they start jogging a little. He starts jogging. They start running. He starts running. Well, Terry's not outrunning him. He's running as fast as he can, and the guy's still behind him. So in order to catch his breath, he runs into Keystone Park to one of the baseball diamonds and gets on the other side of the battery. He gets on the other side of the fence. And he's huffing and puffing, and the guy, anytime the guy would move one way, Terry would move the other way. He'd move this way, he'd move that way. He'd go back and forth. And now Terry apparently can't help himself. He starts messing with the guy again.
Oh my God.
Put it right there. He's, hey, stupid. Hey, try to catch me.
Yeah, yeah.
Now the guy is out of his mind. The guy's insane. So once Terry gets his breath, because he knows now, he knows the neighborhood, he takes off. The guy, he ends up now in Maywood, according to the story. And the guy is fighting with like 4 different cops, and he's beating them. I mean, the cops are jumping on his back and choking him. They get him in a headlock, whatever. They cuff him. And the guy is furious, and then Terry comes down and says, I'm the guy that he was chasing. And they hear him, he hears them call Terry, Terry. Then he starts yelling, Terry, I'm going to get you. Terry, I'm going to get you.
Oh my God.
Out of the back seat. That's the story.
You know, it was March 25th, 1962, the day before my brother Terry was born. My mom and dad and I took our little Fiat that we had, and probably for some fun to get out of the house, went down to the lake. And so it was March, and we got out. My mom stayed in the car. I remember she had a plaid blanket on over this enormous mound of her tummy, with 9-month pregnancy. And she stayed in the car, and we went walking along the slips on the harbor where the boats would be, but of course they weren't there at the time. And there were some steps that go down from the little pier into the boat when the boat is there. And we walked past some steps that were broken. And I recall him saying to me, don't go near those, or don't step on those, or something. And then he turned his head, and because he had just said that to a 2-year-old, I immediately went and stepped on those and fell right into the water. It was very cold, still icy, pieces of ice. He was in the water immediately, grabbed me, and my overriding memory is him holding on to a bunch of chains that were hanging on the side of the pier, and yelling, "Help, help!" And I recall myself yelling, "Help, help!" But I probably wasn't doing much good. But he and I, in the freezing water, yelling for help, is a really, really deep memory, and easy for me to get to. Apparently, then the police came, and there was all kinds of hullabaloo. I have no memory of that. It's funny, my memory stops at the water.
And on my way, here it comes, the big parade. Marching bands and barricades make way for the big parade.
I had started studying for the priesthood when I was 13.
Oh my god.
Jeez.
And I went to Quigley for 5 years. That was on the near north side on Rush and Chestnut.
Okay.
And now it's the Chancery office, the Cardinal's business office. But when I went there, there were tons of people studying for the priesthood. And it was a 5-year program.
And they were all nice guys.
And I got on an L every morning and transferred to the subway and did that for 5 years. I couldn't wait for that 5th year to be over.
It's a long
We
time.
were supposed to be meditating
but-
for it.
but-
I can't wait till it's over.
And they had a European notion. So we went to school on Saturdays and we're off on Thursday. So all my neighborhood friends I new saw again practically.
Wow.
Because
that's so
we-
crazy.
Isn't it?
That's traumatic actually at 13
I would
Yeah.
to
think so.
lose your friends.
Yeah.
And that's probably almost by design too, because
Oh,
you're
I think
trying
it
to
was.
kind
It
of
was to
Mom
keep-
always said,
Yeah, they wanted to keep you together.
isolated.
You know, you had nobody else to play basketball
Yeah.
with on Thursday, so
That is unbelievable.
Wow.
yeah.
And did you see did you see that and were kind of so you started to have those?
No, it was the way. It's the way you had to walk that way, or you weren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we just this crazy sort of.
Yeah, I mean to start at
I-
13.
I was also a good singer,
really.
and I sang at
learned
the
from me.
cathedral every Sunday. So not only did I make 5 trips for school, I was there on the 6th day on Sunday
To sing.
singing the cathedral. And
That's a
the
real
way
neat
the way
thing.
they had Quigley structured, it was a relatively small kitchen area, and you could only seat so many people at one time. So they had a very long lunch period. The first lunch period started at 11:30. The last one started at 1:30. But we had like a 2-hour break in there. Well, that's where all the sports were played. Intramural sports were played, and I never got to play because I was in choir practice.
Oh,
So I'm
Papa, this
in my
this is like the worst thing growing up for,
Yeah.
for a boy and a teenager possible. Like,
I started having like a little war with the guy who was in charge of the
Oh, you used to play.
choir, and I would just skip it on one of the practice days, and go off to see if I could play some baseball or football, whatever it was. And every time I did that, I got 5 demerits. And
Which
they
are
had
dead
2
marks.
Yes.
guys who were the disciplinarians, and whenever I got to go in to report on my 5 demerits, they'd say, "Father Meyer?" And I'd say, "Yeah." And they'd sort
Who's
of laugh.
Father Meyer?
Well, Charlie Meyer was the guy who was in charge of the
I
cathedral.
thought you meant
Yeah, him.
took a
Yeah.
fake
Choir.
name.
Yeah.
So they would sort of laugh, but then on Thursday I'd be down there washing boards and
That's awful.
yeah. So they also had a ceiling. If you had 60 in one year, you were gone. I ended up with 58.
Really? Jeez.
I have the all-time
You're
record.
a rebel.
Wow, I know. I did not expect that.
You had the record.
Oh my gosh, I remember you saying
Well
that.
done.
Yeah.
Round of applause.
You know, it was,
And then you were the ultimate rebel in about
yeah,
20 years later.
Right.
but it,
Comes me.
but it got so close that
Yeah.
I had to be very, very careful. But anyhow,
So yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
but part of that is you lack socialization, and that's a very big part of growing up.
Yeah.
You know, you have to choose and you have to deny. You know, you warm to this and to that and so on. So I didn't have a good. I don't think that was a good emotional experience.
You mean
And
the-
then Mundelein was at 45 miles out,
away.
and we didn't come home for Christmas.
Awful. Oh my
No,
gosh.
we'd come home at the end of January after you had your exams.
That's ironic. Christmas, they're not going to send you home.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then
you
Christmas was
deserved it.
a day without rules out
No,
there. in
I
the
said
sense
Yeah.
I think you
that-
deserve it.
I agree.
And you
And on my way, here it comes, the big parade. Marching bands and barricades make way for the big parade. Oh,
You said you were there for how many years?
5 years.
And that was like the first
My first assignment.
assignment. Okay.
and you didn't know me.
It was a
For
very,
It was
For
coming.
him.
it was a very welcoming place.
Yeah.
You know, and I had a heck of a good time there. I mean, really enjoyed myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, but
N-
in a
not
nice
nutty,
way.
but although I did some stupid things, you know.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Really? I want to know what that was.
I'd be coming back from visiting my mother at Madison and Central, and I'd go over to Eisenhower and get on. What would happen? The pins would all be animals would be in those pins, and God help you if you had a convertible.
Oh God, it smelled.
Because no, they piss. Because really, they were always trying to cheat each other. They would load the cattle up with fluid because they were being paid by the pound.
Oh my God! So they,
Yeah,
so they would cheat that way,
yeah.
and then there would be pee
But the
everywhere.
other guys
That's
cheated
nice.
right back. They had a way of balancing it.
Yeah, that's another
But
way
I
of.
remember the first night I was driving back, and all of a sudden the shower came on the car.
Oh God!
Good thing we didn't have roof top things there.
Was it a cow peeing?
Yeah.
Just taking a leak. Man, that's some saintly. That's some saintly stuff serving there in Canaryville.
Just being normal. These were permanent people in this area, and partly because it was political. Everybody was a policeman, a fireman, a plumber. They all
You mean
had.
in St. Kate's?
Yeah, and St. Gabriel's.
Oh, Gabriel's. Never saw that.
That was their political base too. I mean, the 11th ward was Daly's ward. The families were basically poor,
Yeah.
but they probably were the funniest kids you could find. They could stand on this street corner for hours, outdoing one another with stories. You know, but that was part of the thing, and they also drank too much. In our parish, which was like 10 blocks long, but only 4 blocks east to west, there were 29 taverns.
Wow.
And part of it was because of the
Stockyards.
because these people were coming in from all over
Yeah.
in big trucks. They had nothing else to do with themselves. A lot of them slept in their trucks in the cab type of thing. So they frequented the bars. But also the people who lived in this area had their own favorite bars. You know, I was supposed to be like Cheers in some ways for some people. They didn't leave the area because if they did, they would lose their patronage job. So there were a lot of that. But there was a lot of cohesion there. The majority of people were Irish, and the rest was mixture.
Okay.
You loved your.
And then can you also tell us that story about there had been race riot at some point, and then later you did a story about the pool. Can you kind of...
Well, I wasn't aware of it when I got there. You know, I wasn't aware of the geography at all. I was a West Side person growing up. I grew up in the Garfield area in Chicago. So you get out there, and I hear a lot of this tension type of stuff. So I'm trying to have somebody tell you what's this based on, and really it went back to a race riot that happened after the First World War, when the white people were coming back from the army, and the black people who had come up from the deep south had taken their jobs. They didn't seek these jobs. The owners of the stockyards went looking for cheap labor and brought it up. And they didn't want the change to go back.
Right.
Because if the guys were making
Cheap labor.
$2 an hour who were working for them, the guys coming back wanted 4 or 5, and they would have unions and things like that. So, at any rate, it had a lot of repercussions, and they really had, like the railroad that separated them geographically, they were just separated emotionally. And I could not believe, that they could feel that intensity as if it would happen yesterday. I mean, when they told the stories.
And they probably didn't do a lot of intermingling either, so like that tension grew as they had been across the tracks from each other.
I'll bet to this day there's very little interchange.
Were there blacks who were at your parish?
No,
Really?
no. The
would
church
have
was
been
as segregated as the city.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, they
It
would
really
have been
was.
welcome, Tom? If the
No, I
blacks
never
would-
saw
they
a
would-
black person in St. Gabriel's
That's
Parish
horrible.
Church.
No.
Well,
I don't
first
care.
of all,
It stinks.
there's very few blacks who are Catholic. And they had their church was right across the railroad tracks, and there was a good group of nuns and priests who were working hard, with the community, but they had the same problem. As long as the city was as segregated as it was and still is, Chicago was a terrible blueprint for integration.
Oh, yeah.
That's true.
In answer to charges that integration brings on slum-like conditions, the Reverend Thomas Lally of St. Catherine of Siena Parish said, "True integration will not destroy a neighborhood. It will conserve and improve it. It will eliminate the creeping expansion of a ghetto and will provide a stable, peaceful atmosphere. It seems to me," said Father Lally, "that integration must come to all neighborhoods, suburban and city. The last frontier for Americans to overcome is not geographical. It is an exercise to make the ideals of citizenship with dignity and responsibility a reality. Segregation in past times," continued the priest, "ravaged America and spread hate and fear in a land of free men. It sowed distrust among citizens. The road to successful integration," admitted Father Lally, "is a hazardous one. Now, injustices cannot be constructive tools. Difficulties must breed patience, understanding, and hope, not despair, intolerance, and riots. Neighborhoods inevitably suffer the wear of time and people disintegrate when they lack concern and cooperation. People of dignity have rights," Father Lally concluded. "The property rights of some citizens do not negate the personal rights of others. These rights balance and ensure each other."
And then you said that there was a black pool and there
Yeah,
was white baseball fields.
Yeah, right.
And so
Jeez.
you, as a priest, what can you explain what you did?
No, I used to be assigned to. I mean, you join one of the teams. you
Yeah.
know. And I played for 5 years for whichever team would have me.
But yeah, and then obviously those were pretty much white fields.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the black kids never played baseball there. And this was all 16
That
inch.
stinks.
And I don't know if you ever played 16 inch.
No, not yet.
It's a smaller diamond, and if you're a third baseman, you're 30 feet away from home, and a guy can hit a sizzler and rip
Ouch.
your head off.
And that's not funny.
That's
That's
so
There
horrible.
close.
Yeah,
you know.
your thumbs.
And there were some great ball players, and that was the one thing that they really recognized. If you were good at sports, among themselves,
Yeah.
they were heroes. They really believed in sport heroes.
It's like a
That
tribe. It's
Yeah.
just,
And then you had kids that wanted to go to the black pool. You had white kids that wanted
Yes.
to go to the black
Oh.
pool. So can you tell us about that moment?
Yeah, I wanted to loosen things up, and
rabble rouser.
no, they were always complaining. We have no place to go, and the YMCA was, old good Catholics never went to YMCA's when they used to. Yeah, they're always afraid you were going to turn them somehow. But at any rate, yeah, and so the nearest pool was in the black area right across the tracks, and I said, well, let's experiment. And I talked to a police friend of mine and said, these guys are always moaning. Let's do this, and just talking about it may be of some value, but it also had the fear all over it, fears somebody was going to get hurt. So we had plenty of police, take them over, stay with them, take them back. And it was
No problem.
short story.
So you did it one time. You
It
brought a
only
bunch of.
happened once.
How many kids was it approximately?
Oh, probably 100 kids.
Oh my gosh!
Good.
Oh yeah, they had
heavens.
tons of kids in
Wow.
St. Gabriel's.
Oh, that's a lot.
Wow. Okay.
I wasn't envisioning that.
Yeah. And some of them were, little kids like 6 and 7, but their older brothers who were 13 or 14 were with them,
Wow. And so this was your initiative, and then that was kind of like a one-time thing. It kind of felt like it was not a good idea.
But it wasn't accepted very well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, because
you're not going to do it twice when it didn't work. Because actually, then people would organize against,
Yeah.
and
yeah.
didn't need that.
Yeah.
Wow.
You transferred into St. Catherine's.
He was
Well,
transferred.
they sent me a
Largely
letter
because
saying,
you were such a rebel at.
I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know if that was
You were
the
a bit
only
rebel.
thing, but
Yeah.
I've always had sort of a
A rebel.
yeah.
Because you were speaking
I
out
question
about the
Justice.
I don't
segregation.
have answers for everything, but I like to question.
That's right.
Nice, nice.
Lovely girl, won't you stay? Oh, my,
So
He
you-
just kept going after me. Let's get to the real.
so you're.
she's right.
We didn't know each other at the time that Terry got killed.
But you were kind of close to each other?
No,
No.
Okay.
no.
Yeah, that's a good.
Probably the thing that brought us more together was the preschool. And then
Oh, yeah.
the preschool people who worked, whose children were in there, a lot of them worked with me, and Mary was one of them, as we would have these dances for the high school kids.
Oh, that's right.
And the money that
Forgot.
would be raised, we used that to buy all the furniture for the
Little
preschool.
preschoolers and
And
pat
we
tablets
bought
and
a
stuff.
a
Oh
big
my
jukebox
God.
for the
It was all his idea.
canteen.
Oh,
And,
that's so cute.
you know, and it was sort of strange because Oak Park, was divided between Austin and Oak Park. At that time, they used to have the kids who went to Oak Park were dupers, and the others were greasers.
Oh, yeah.
And so when they would have these dances, you'd have to be very, very careful. Girls
Fights.
coming with purses all have to be taken. They don't get their purse until they walk out.
Why?
Because they could carry a bottle or anything else in it that I wasn't going to mess with. They have these exaggerated feelings that they can't stand one another, and you have to put up with, something. but
It's like a
that
husband
was
and wife, I guess.
Yeah.
if ever there was a form of penance, it was having those dances. They had these speakers that were this big, and
But
the
you were
kids
the
would
one who
sit
started
in front
it.
of them. And I'd say, "How the hell do you do this?"
Weren't you the one who had the speakers?
Yeah, no, the bands would bring in.
Oh, of course.
No. If I had the speakers, they would have been.
I know that's true.
This big.
I know that's true.
And every girl who came in, we checked coats.
Wow. Wait, every girl.
Well, every girl and every guy who had an outside jacket
Oh.
checked it.
Oh, an
'Cause- and you
outside,
could not-
like Oak
you
Park
could not-
High or something.
Yeah, you have to have multiple doors in any public building. So we had one guy at the back who, if you went out, you're out. And if you say, "Well, but I left my coat," stay outside till we're done, and you can come in and claim it.
He was
Because
the tough
Makes sense,
guy.
yeah.
well, no, because you can't
we
have them.
were all the
What do they have in the car?
chaperones.
I do it first filter. I'm not going to do it twice. and with the girls, But anyhow, people like Mary and other teachers would work with, because what am I going to do? I can't go into the girls' dressing room or washroom,
Okay,
whatever you want to
girls,
call it.
close your eyes.
So they would take a little tour every once in a while, and I had to be on the floor.
Who would take a tour?
You and Margaret, you just to walk around and not just to check on people. You want to befriend them too,
Right.
Because
Absolutely we did.
it was a good thing.
She said,
I
"This
guess.
is for you
So,
guys."
yeah.
Huh?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
No, but I would go home after that was done,
The record.
and I could not do anything for 3 hours or so while my head came back.
How about that?
The hearing loss. The hearing loss.
And how they could sit in front of the speakers just amazed me.
But they still
So-
do.
TV cameras and stagehands, American bandstand, electric guitar.
So you've known people that were in Papa's.
That knew my dad as Father Lally, and I have my friend Ed Holstein is friends with a man named Jack Clark, and this was years ago. We were at the bar at the Grafton, and somehow it came up about where I lived. He thought I was from Wisconsin. I get that all the time, and I said no, I was from the West Side, and he, where? And I said Galewood. And he said, well, I'm from Austin. And I thought, So then you start talking about the intersecting streets. And then it's always by parish. So he went to St. Catherine's. He lived in Austin, in the Chicago side, while St. Kate's was in Oak Park. And I said, that's my mom's parish where she grew up. And I said, and my dad, I said, well, they still go to church there. And somehow it came up, and he said, "You're Father Lally's daughter?" Yes, I am, which I'm always proud of. But whenever I go and I hear Jack perform, if his friends or his family, his whole family, I've met the whole Clark family, and your dad, Father Lally. It's kind of sweet to hear these nice little stories. But a lot of Jack's classmates, they were right in my dad's. In that period of time when he was at St. Kate's. So they all know him. I will sit in the audience just trying to be quiet, being a good listener, supporting the musician, and he'll say, Father Lally's daughter sitting over there, and it's always like, yeah.
And he has
And
a
I'm
good
wondering-
reputation too.
Oh,
That's
very good
good.
reputation, yeah.
He didn't crack the whip on those
No,
boys.
no. There was he did the dances and he was young. at
Yeah,
the time,
he
so
was
I
the
think
young-
He was the young priest. So,
That I think
but I've
is
had
so
more
interesting.
than several people tell me just very nice things, about what a good man and gentle, and they're so happy. Whenever, and my dad, I've brought my dad and my mom to the Grafton to see Jack, and they've met some of his family again. So
That's so funny.
a small world.
Small world is
Father
right.
Lally's daughter, which always makes some of my students or people in the Old Town community kind of turn and
Yeah, like, what?
Did you
Sure did.
Did you feel like it was sort
I
of
love
like?
that tea.
Did you feel like maybe when you met Grandmommy that it was sort of?
Could you say Mary? Grandmommy
Mary.
sounds
Sorry.
so
Did you when you met Mary?
Grandmommy.
When you met
Tommy.
Mary, Tom, when you met Mary, did you feel in any way that was sort of like a long time coming for your own, like,
Yeah, well,
Personhood.
the thing
Yeah.
is, like, I was at St.
Development.
Gabriel's, it'd be the first time you were working with adult women.
yeah,
Okay, and so some of them were wonderful, didn't have a interest in any of them, in the sense of,
That's what you always said. No, I'm kidding.
but there were friends
Yeah.
that were working with you on different projects and so on. No, it was scary when I started to have feelings. It was
yeah.
because I had nothing to measure it against.
Yeah.
And so you two connected then for some time, like during this sort of initiative with the dances and then the preschool, and then at some point you two were like sort of found interest in one another.
Yeah, part of it was a community thing in a sense. A couple that was real close to us, their name was McGrady, and they had
Margaret and
they had a beach home up in Twin Lakes, and so Mary would bring her children, the McGradys would bring their children, the Shirks would bring their children, and I would be there too. So
It's so nice to see you.
So eventually, we spent more time understanding each other, or trying anyhow. Because for me, it was really a strange thing.
Yeah, I bet.
Well,
But you put your toe in first. In the water.
Together, so like you would come over and the
Well, what-
kids would know
Yeah.
you
Oh,
as.
Father Tom is here.
Yeah, Father Tom.
is here.
well, that Father Tom came out of those times up in Twin Lakes.
We used to go up to Lake Geneva and Twin Lakes a lot. Again, their social circle people had houses up there, or they knew people up there. We would go up for the day and swim, or in the winter snowmobile and toboggan. Tom had a toboggan, which was very, cool. The families didn't really have those. They rented those. They had sleds, but he had a toboggan, and so that was really neat. And we had our own toboggan with somebody that we later called Dad, and this was really important for us. The McGradys had a beautiful house on Twin Lakes, and they would have, 20 people overnight there. Again, just late 60s, lots of music, fun, everybody on the beach. I was afraid of swimming. In those days, I was about 7 or 8, and that was because I had a fall in Lake Michigan in 1962. So I was, I think, marked by that and really afraid to put my head underwater. And so I remember Tom staying with me the whole afternoon at the McGrady's Beach in Twin Lakes, and just very patiently going further and further out and having me swim, teaching me a few little moves to swim, and then another foot or two and another foot. Again, never saying, oh, that wasn't right, or you really can't do this, or anything like that. He always believed I could get there, and that message was communicated to me, and indeed I did. But when Dad was Tom, he spent a lot of really good, what we call now quality time with us. He bought me a knitting machine for my first communion, and I remember trying really hard to make something that he would like. I'm terrible with that kind of thing, so I'm sure I didn't succeed. But he never made me feel that I didn't succeed, ever, my whole life. And when I think about it, Terry saving me in 1962 from my fall into the water, and Tom saving me from being a lifelong frightened non-swimmer, making me feel comfortable with the world around me. And it took me a long time before I saw the continuity between those two scenes. And in both cases, you know, there's a father with his arm around a little girl, making her feel comfortable and making her feel safe. And, you know, they, I guess, are connected themselves in bringing that to this family.
And I did a lot of praying because I was scared stiff.
I wasn't.
Not only would it look like turning your back on everything that went before, but it also would have been interpreted by other people in different ways.
About me.
Family had different feelings about it. My dad was dead. My mother was a wonderful,
Oh,
kind,
precious. Irish,
Precious lady.
wonderful girl.
and she and I had 3 sisters and 2 brothers. One sister in particular resisted the idea
Oh, yeah.
very strongly,
Really?
and she was a very devout Catholic. Every morning, I don't know how you can be devout and have you know, the kind of feelings that she had, but you know, she I think she would have.
You think she would have come around? I don't think so.
No,
Her
she would-
brother, the priest,
No,
was...
she tried to counsel me to go to Ireland and just forget about all this stuff.
To go to Ireland.
Ireland.
Yeah, they
Really?
always went, she and her husband always went to Ireland.
And so she was
Go to Ireland,
counseling
see
that way, so
Ireland
there was
and
that
make up your
pressure.
mind.
Oh, yeah.
There was that pressure, like in your own family, to not
Yeah,
go that
and
way.
what was it gonna
and
do?
then in the organized
Oh,
Catholic structure, right?
yeah.
Can you?
Canvas covered in red.
Probably my feelings
Man,
were hardened, you know, where I felt a little safer about it all toward the end of '66. And they had a program or procedure. If you wanted to leave, you actually had to forget the priesthood. You
That's
almost
so
had to deny
nasty.
it.
That's sinful.
And at the time, the fellow who was in charge of Chicago, his name was Cardinal Cody.
Ugh.
But he
Now I am
was,
sick.
but he was over in Rome in the third session of the Vatican II Council, and so I had to go see his associate bishop, and told him that I thought this was the right thing for me, and he said, "Well, I want you to see this priest psychologist who was out at in Glen Ellen. There's a place called Maryknoll. It was a Maryknoll seminary at the time, and the priest who was there was quite a known writer and
And a nice
psychologist.
man, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, but so I went to see him, and he said, "I don't think there's anything crazy about you. You know, you seem to have thought about it, and you're making a judgment. But he sent me to see a Jewish psychiatrist on Michigan Avenue, and he said, the reason I'm doing this is I also am a priest, and I have, carryover feelings for the priesthood. That
Conflict of interest,
so,
almost.
yeah.
Yeah.
He said, so you go see this guy, and when I went to see him, we went through all this thing for an hour. We didn't do any formal testing. We just had a long
Not me.
conversation.
Yeah, you're like, I'm waiting
And,
for you.
um,
And when you're done
he
with
said,
that.
You sound like you're
Swing
you're
this
sane.
Yeah.
So as far as I'm concerned,
Yeah.
go see the bishop and tell him you've been checked
You're
out.
good.
And
You're checked
so
out.
I did that. Had to go back see the assistant bishop and told him, and he said, "Well, I can't do anything for you myself. The cardinal is going to be back in a couple months, and then I'll set up an appointment for you."
And this is the Cardinal
Cardinal
Archbishop
Fact.
of
What's his name?
Chicago.
Chicago,
Yeah.
and he has to approve.
Somehow or
Yeah.
other, when I was moving out of the rectory, somehow or other, a newspaper man called me that I didn't recognize as a newspaper man. He was from the Associated Press, and not from the A&P food store
It's
that was a
person,
couple
yeah.
blocks
Oh, it was
away.
AP's, the A&P.
Yeah, so he,
He's from AP,
So this-
Associated Press.
so this guy is asking me questions, and I'm wondering, what the hell does he care about this?
You're a grocer.
So he
I'm a grocer. Right.
So he
I just want paper,
Yeah.
he asked
not
he
plastic.
he asked all these questions, and actually it was a long interview. And finally I said, I gotta go. I'm in the process of moving out.
Yeah.
Pat McGrady helped me.
From Richard Philbrick of the Associated Press, definitely not a grocer. Published by the Chicago Tribune in the Sunday edition, front page, April 5th, 1967. A young Chicago area Roman Catholic priest has revealed that he will ask to leave the priesthood and marry with the consent of his church superiors. Though the chances that he will receive permission are dim, and it would be a long time before a decision could be made, the woman he contemplates marrying has agreed they will not wed without the church's blessing. The woman waiting with him is a 32-year-old widow who lives in his parish. She has 3 children. Told that his name would not be made known, the young priest, an assistant in a prosperous suburban parish, said that he had taken a 6-month leave to consider his problems. The advice he has received so far has not been especially helpful, he said. One bishop I asked said the general procedure in the past was that men left and got married and then had it okayed, said the priest. If I ever marry, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to wait for them to give me permission. I am not leaving the church, he said. I have no question about the faith.
That didn't get published for about a month, just in time for John Patrick Cody to come back to Chicago. And one of the things they tell him
Horrible man.
on his agenda is you're going to have to talk to this fellow and see what's happened. Guy does go to press, and it's under an AP line, so it's picked up all over the country.
That's
and this
funny.
young
Your
priest,
story.
I went
young
and lived
priest,
All
in
over the
basement.
country.
yeah, young
You
priest.
what?
I said I went and lived in the basement. Oh, I'm kidding.
Is leaving, and these are the reasons he gives and what he thinks and all that.
God.
It's the
My
Sunday
dad was
paper.
great.
I have an appointment with Cody the next day,
Oh my God.
and so
My
Cody
stomach
said,
was just jumping.
He said, have you given this some thought? I said, yes, I did. He said, what? Tell me some other things. And I said, well, you want me to talk about just me or the priesthood in general? He said, priesthood in
Is
general.
this Cody?
Yeah, priesthood in general. I said, well, the way I see it, half the priests you have are basically bachelors. They live a bachelor life. They play golf every Thursday. They go to the best movies or shows. They take good vacations. They, all these things. I said, they're not into the ministry they should be into. And part of it was, at that time, there were thousands of priests. And so they did have a lot of time on their hands, and they didn't use it to
They wouldn't be
the
fully
way they could have or should have. And so he said, "You're pretty sure of yourself? Have you dallied in this?"
From the female?
Yeah, and
The Archbishop
Yeah,
of
if-
Chicago
yeah.
is asking you if you had just tried to have
right.
extramarital
And
affair
then he says,
to get it over with.
No, he said,
To get it over with.
yeah,
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 that's what he wanted Papa to do.
yeah.
Oh, do it
Try-
one time, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
His crude statement was,
Oh,
you don't have to buy the bakery to sample a bun.
isn't that
Um,
awful?
Oh.
And if I were there, I would have said, your
Unbelievable.
buns are
Yeah.
huge. Stevino.
And
It's just like
Oh,
so anyhow,
horrible thing.
he and I parted,
oh,
and he did put in the thing, recommendation that I get it, but then they played games with it. If we're going to do
real
this,
Christian.
you're going to move 500 miles away.
Really?
And I said, no.
I went, I ain't going.
Wow.
Then the next
Find someone else.
next time,
Ain't going.
3 months
Yeah.
later, you're going to move to St. Louis. No. You're going to move to Milwaukee.
He's always closer.
No. And this time I have a job at City Hall.
yeah.
And, I wasn't going anyplace.
Oh, and he was such
And
a fat.
I'll give you a little other insight. The guy that I worked for, his name was Lou Hill.
Oh, he was wonderful.
And he was one of the most talented people I ever met in my life. He actually was an artist, but he was a numbers man like nobody I ever met before. This guy was just terrific. Anyhow, Cody called him over and said,
To his. Cody called him to
called
his.
Lou Hill over to
Oh,
the Cardinals Mansion.
Wow.
Have you ever seen where it is? It's probably on the best piece of real estate in Chicago.
Unreal.
Right at the turn on Outer Drive and North Avenue.
Speaking of bachelor's life.
Yeah. And he says, I want you to fire him. He's got to get out of here.
Oh, Cody called Lou Hill?
Yeah, and Cody and Hill
You
came
run your
back,
business.
and he went in to see Dick Daly, the father. And Daly said to him, well, you go back and tell him. He can run his church. I run my city, and I am the one who hire and fire
Isn't that
people,
great?
not
Yes.
you.
Daly said
Yeah.
that about
Daly.
you.
Richard
Yes.
Sr.
He said, go
yeah.
back and later on I found out one of the reasons why Daly was so much in my
Favorite.
corner at the time. His sister-in-law was a friend of mine from St. Gabriel's that I never knew.
Wow.
The relationship.
You
So
never
all the way
knew.
back
Oh.
to St. Gabriel's.
She must have said
That's
something.
amazing.
Ironic. Wow.
That's amazing.
That is
Yeah.
seriously amazing.
This is like an unbelievable cast of characters. And,
Well,
and you're in the middle of it, and
Yeah.
then
We're
justice
picking,
prevails.
we're picking the
thank
people
God.
tonight.
And quick question: what would they have done if you just left without having gone through all this
Oh,
stuff
they
to
wouldn't
ask their
bother.
permission?
The only
They
reason
wouldn't have bothered.
why you did this,
Probably.
the only reason why you did this is I wanted to marry Mary in the church.
Ah, so they wouldn't
this-
have recognized it.
They wouldn't
Interesting.
permit
They
it.
wouldn't.
Okay.
So
and
the-
and quick question for you, Grandma. I mean, when you were talking about the newspaper article, you mentioned that your parents were furious.
My dad wasn't.
No.
No, my mom.
Yeah.
And it really upset her. And it was just a really, and there's nothing I could do about it.
I mean, it must have been like the talk of like the neighborhood, the
no, I
town.
really don't think so. The church,
Oh,
yes.
I'm sure.
Go over
Sure,
there.
yeah.
But not the
No,
neighbors.
Okay.
Oh, it's her again.
So, Grammy,
I can't even talk anymore. Yes, Thomas.
so what was it like for you, having 3 kids already, like having the tragedy of Terry's passing behind you, and then you start to fall in love with Father Tom. What was that like for you?
Wow, it was great.
It was great.
Yeah, it was. I mean, there was really. I mean, it was real, and it
Yeah.
still is. So that should tell you.
And what were some of like the good memories that you remember of just like falling in love with Tom?
Falling in love. Yeah. It just was meant to be. It's one of those things that's deep in the heart, and you just know, no matter who it is, you really think this. I mean, if you don't know him real well and you're trying him, I really don't know what to do. But then he always won.
Yeah.
I knew that was the right thing. I think I know I'm telling my father was marvelous. Mother was so. I think she was more embarrassed than anything, don't you?
And fearful
For me.
what harm might come.
Yeah, and
not
I knew
only
I
to you, but
wasn't.
to the children.
I wasn't worried
especially.
about
Yeah,
the
horror.
kids. Yeah.
Like-
well, not. I mean, like maybe they turn out to be, running away, and but they were
yeah.
great little kids. Is that what you meant? I thought they were very secure.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it ended up that way, which is
Yeah.
great. But
Could I tell that one story? It just came in my mind. How they, my sweet mother, and I adored her. I still do. She was like, she didn't really approve. My dad would just go along with your mom. It'll all work out. That type of thing.
yeah,
But the kids would came out into the living room and they're throwing pictures and
Yeah.
Do you remember this?
well, okay, so I heard briefly about this.
Oh, and I'm like,
So your mom was
break
so
every
in
rule.
such.
Go
So you had
ahead,
told.
children.
yes.
So you had
That's
told.
right.
You had told your mom like that day, Lila, that like you and Tom were gonna be together romantically, and he was gonna leave the priesthood, right? And her reaction was because you were living in the same house.
It was right over in Taylor Avenue.
So you were living in the same house, and she had the 3 kids, and she sort of brought them in on the.
She said, break everything you want, children. We have someone in this house that doesn't care about law, and
It doesn't matter.
it doesn't
yeah.
matter at all.
It's
And
literally
she said,
like
"Really?"
smashing things.
So Terry, Missy,
That
and,
is unreal.
and our mom Corey were like taking things and breaking them in the house.
And I think it was your mother that said, I don't like this. I can't do this.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But the kids were, they didn't know what was going on. They were, but they thought, whatever it's put in front of us, let's do what we have to do.
I'm
She was heartbroken.
yeah.
Her
and
only daughter.
it sort of shows like
Oh, my
how
heart ached for it. I
that
knew I was
situation
gonna
was
change
so
Really?
it was so different, and it was such a it probably flipped everybody's world upside down. So everybody was
And that is-
it was an
yeah.
extreme situation, and so everybody had extreme reactions. Your side, both of your sides of your families, and you guys kept true to what you guys knew was right, which was your love for each other, and that is.
And his mom was a darling, and my mom and dad, all the best. But I loved your mom. Wasn't it Eileen and Bill that said, you got to meet her? And she was a little nervous, and I just gave her a hug, and of course,
So
Tom.
sweet.
There was good parts to it.
Yeah.
She stepped over the dishes.
Yeah. Well, was it just that Lila was just concerned about the well-being of the kids? That was like
And
her
her
main
daughter, and me too.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like she thought that there was it might be like a corruption
Well,
kind of
no,
situation.
I think she thought, okay, I'm a Catholic, Mary's a Catholic. These children are coming up, like Corey was making her first communion and right around that time. And it was so difficult for her that I just cried. I
But
could say,
why
God,
exactly?
forgive me, but
Why do you think it was difficult for her?
because, first of all, she was a very devout Catholic. Second of all, women are worse, are more so than men, not worse. They know when someone's talking about them. They just do, Beep, 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 beep,
And that's a
beep,
tight knit
check.
community. We don't have Terrell and I don't really have like a good basis for having a neighborhood where everybody knew each other for
Okay.
generations.
But they did with us.
And
We
they
lived
did,
there
and
since
especially with
1940
Lila, she was older and had so many connections in
But
the
she
neighborhood.
never, that was the end of it. She never said another word.
After that,
And she would put those shoulders back and held her head up high.
Wow.
Because she had modeled, used to be a model.
Yeah.
And she just, you know,
Wow.
and she appreciated you. And of course, my dad loved Tom from the beginning.
you know,
I love every time I hear them say, Dad, Dad,
yeah.
the kids.
He went from being called Father Lally to Tom to one night when they had gotten married. I'm not sure if it was their wedding night, actually. They just went downtown to the city hall and got married. And one night around that time, they came over, he came over, Tom came over, and said, we have a surprise for you kids, and from now on, Tom is going to be your father, and you can call him Dad. And we all got terrifically surprised and excited about that. I remembered calling Terry Dad, but the kids had never had, Terry and Missy had never had a dad to say that to, and of course all their friends did, and you know, so they were aware of that. So we were in our room, jumping on our bunk beds, and they were very patient because for at least an hour they'd say, okay, now go to sleep, and we'd say, okay, good night, Mom, good night, Dad, and we'd keep yelling it, and then they'd laugh and they'd say, okay, go to sleep now, and then it would start up again, and then it would start up again.
And I just thought he was my mom's friend, which he was. You know, I just didn't notice. And he would pick me up and twirl me around, and I would just call him Tom. You know, I loved my mom's friend Tom. Like, it was awesome. He was like the nicest guy ever. But then like when a couple years later we moved, and when they got married, that was a whole other thing, because they're like, you have a dad, and we really didn't. Ross really was the closest thing to our father. And
Were you excited to have a dad again?
so excited. But I gotta tell you, I don't really think that I knew what I was missing because of how close we were to Ross and Pat and Lila and Papa T. They filled that void quickly. And my mom was so young. She was so young.
Yeah.
She was 26, 3 kids, and they just swooped in. Yeah, did I get it later? Yeah, I did. I got it a little bit later. Like, wow. I mean, when you get older, then it really hits you. But Rossi was, he was single. He was, you know, getting his law degree. He came home and ate dinner with us every night like a normal family. I mean, so he filled that void for us. But when we really started to know Tom, and we moved to Galewood and in Chicago, and then they got married, we were so excited, so very excited, and we've loved them ever since. They are very committed to each other. They love each other so much. They depend on each other. They were meant to be together. They truly were meant to be together. He has been, he's been just incredible. Just an incredible human being to us. I mean, my mom's really had 2 great men in her life. And, you know, let's not even get into my mom, because she's just incredible in her own way. She's gone through a lot in her life. He has been there for us every step of the way. He's such a kind, good human being, and just jumped into the fatherhood role real quick after they got married. Real quick. I mean, it was just, you know, hold your nose and jump in. That was it. He was just filled that role beautifully, and we love him dearly.
Canvas cover.
Your birthday is
1971.
1971.
July 22nd, Yep.
So that was a few years after they wed.
Mm-hmm.
And did you find it strange when you found out how they met?
I didn't find, I remember being at Lila's, and my mom and dad were out, and I was in the back room, the back porch where the TV room was. And there
The
was,
117?
At 117.
Yeah.
And there was a bookshelf, a low bookshelf, and it had photographs plus books, and there was a picture of my mom in a wedding dress with not my dad, and it was Terry, and I looked. I don't know how old I was, maybe 6 or 7 probably, and asked, who is this? And Lila told me it was Uncle Ross because she didn't know what to say. And then when I think one of my folks got home, she said, you got to tell her, because it was very clear that my mom was in a wedding dress, and this very handsome man who wasn't my dad but looked kind of like Terry but kind of like Uncle Ross. I didn't know who that was. So
That's a pretty good out for Lila of thinking on her feet.
It was good. She was very, he was in his Air Force uniform, if I remember right. So after that, I found out. And it didn't, I don't remember a specific talk about that, but I do remember being in freshman year of high school, and this girl that I went to school with, her mother knew my dad at St. Catherine's, and made a comment about me having half sisters and a half brother, and I was 14, and I thought, what?
Yeah, like that seems kind of
I've
rude.
never thought
What do you
that.
mean? Yeah.
There was never a distinction.
Yeah.
Of full or half.
It's never been.
I never thought that.
Yeah. What was that like for you growing up having older siblings?
It was great. I feel like I'm a better person because of it.
Yeah.
And in some ways, it was almost like I had two experiences, because I was the youngest while everyone was still home. I'm still the youngest, but then when everyone left to go to college or move out, I was alone for a while with mom and dad.
Yeah,
So
and you were the baby.
I was the baby, and, but I think it was great. I think it makes me it built character.
Yeah.
For sure. And we were just talking about this the other night. That being the youngest, you either have to go with the flow and be a good sport, or you're in for a rough awakening.
That's right.
But it helps you get a stronger backbone. And
Yeah.
I think so. When you think about the only two beings that are of my mom and dad would be me and Mary Carroll, and I always wonder, what that would have been like to have
Another sister. Yeah, and of course Mary Carroll passed.
She died the day she was born. Yep.
And one story about that, and it's an unfortunate story, but it is an interesting tidbit, is that Stephen, who you're set to marry in
a couple weeks.
Stephen Glover. So you're Mary Lally in this video, but soon you'll be Maura Glover. His younger sibling.
Older sibling.
Older
His
sibling.
brother is buried probably 40 feet from where Mary Carroll is buried.
In suburban Chicago,
Yeah.
even though he grew up in Minnesota and Kansas
But
mostly.
this is where he was born. This is where his family was. So his brother James is buried not that far from Mary Carroll.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot of inner things.
Yeah. That's a really that really gets you thinking.
Yeah. Well, I think I've had the great fortune of being close to both of them, and beyond parent-child relationship, I think we're very open with one another, and have been throughout my life, especially as an adult. And I think they're great teachers at being a good person and being a loving person, and talk about unconditional love. I do think that. I've always felt that. And I'm honored to be their daughter and their pal. And, we care for one another, and we've had a lot of good times too. A lot of things we understand each other.
Yeah.
I think so.
And
lucky about that.
50 years of their marriage is coming up in the same month that you're getting married.
Yes.
And moving to Minnesota.
Yeah. It's a whole mix of feelings, but I'm marrying my best friend, and so I feel great about that, and I feel that Steve knows my family, and I feel like we'll all know each other more and more. Now he'll be a part of the Lallys, I'll be part of the Glovers, and I feel like I'm well prepared in a lot of ways. That sounds so stupid, but I know myself more. I learn every day. You know,
Yeah.
in life you can't plan everything out in very rational ways, but I feel safe and good and happy knowing what this new, what I'm about to embark on. It's not like that.
Bushel and a peck and a hug around the neck. Love, love, love.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry,
Oh, damn.
that my timing is so bad.
Oh, I'm sorry for you.
Yeah.
We'll be okay.
But it won't be the same.
There's more ahead, so.
Huh?
There's much more ahead.
Yeah.
There's
That's
a
true.
lot more to
You're
life
right.
than just these 2 words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So since it
It's
is
always
your
edited. Yeah, what?
since it is your intention to enter into marriage,
Sensitive of your intentions with intent to marry,
join your right hands
join your right hand
and declare your consent before God and His church.
and declare your consent before God and His church.
So the groom says,
Hmm?
I,
I,
Stephen Glover,
I, Stephen
Glover,
Steve Glover,
take you more
take you more T. Lally
take you, Marty Lally,
to be my lawful wife,
to be my lawful wife,
to have and to
to
hold
have and to hold
from this day
from
forward
this day forward
until the death of us
until
part.
death does part.
And we promise, I, Maura T. Lally, take Stephen,
I'm Maura T. Lally.
Take
Stephen
Stephen
Christopher Glover
C. Glover as my lawful husband,
as my
to
lawful
have
husband.
and to hold
To have and
from
hold
this day forward,
from this
for better or for worse, until death do us part. This moment of expression of love is only surpassed by the expression of the Eucharist, where the Lord gave Himself completely to not only to one, but to all, through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. That was great. Good job.
Well done. Congratulations.
Yay.
What a venue, Elmhurst Hospital.
Isn't that, I mean, it's for everyone.
Great job, Papa.
It's really,
Thank you.
it's really,
Father Thomas.
Yeah. Father Time.
don't say.
If you get to be a writer and you want to talk about love, really it comes down to 2 things, which is, false. Nothing's that simple. It's learning to care and to share. That's what it's all about. But that's why you should love your wife.
then there was this other priest, and
Father who?
well, Father Woo.
Father who?
How did you guys get to hang out with each other? Did you ever even get to see each other a lot?
When
He had a garage in it. No, I'm kidding. It's not true.
So funny.
It worked
Oh,
out.
this is the chair I usually tie you up in. Oh, I didn't. Crazy Mary. Oh Lord.
So do you remember? So this was you guys got to know each other up at that lake.
well,
I thought you said up that late.
Oh my god.
you're gonna have to
So there's no edit button that can
have
edit
to
out.
clean
the-
I swear, I thought it was if you said that up that late. I thought, oh dear God, I got 3 kids at home. I gotta go. You
do
guys,
remember.
Thomas.
All right.
the best.